Well, hey there, guys. I'm Axel the Beast, and this is the Curiosity Shop, the ZeldaDungeon.net video mailbag where I answer your Zelda questions. Alas, this is the last Majora's Mask month mailbag, which means after this, the questions will not all be about Majora's Mask, sadly. That was fun. Our first question comes from Marth5055. In Majora's Mask, if the Happy Mask Salesman is the same one in Ocarina of Time, does that mean it's the same Link too? Yes. Brendan asks, what is your favorite music piece from the soundtrack of Majora's Mask and why? Definitely, without a doubt, the Stone Tower Temple song. Specifically, actually, the first version, not the one that plays when it's flipped, although that is epic too and might as well just go along with it. I thought that the Stone Tower Temple music was just amazing, mysterious, and creepy, and in a way beautiful at the same time. I just thought it was like a perfect song for the final dungeon of the game. I just thought it sounded so cool. Those are my reasons why. Be sure to tell me your guys' favorite Majora's Mask song in the comments. Carter Koopman asks, what features of Majora's Mask would you want to see refined and included in a remake or in other Zeldas like Skyward Sword? I don't really want to see a remake of Majora's Mask so much, but in other Zeldas, there are features about Majora's Mask I think are, like, crucial that made it what it was, and also that I think particularly could actually work very well in another game if done right. One, I think, is definitely what they did with the NPCs. Now, they don't necessarily need to have the side quest focus where the main game isn't quite as, engaging, but then they have all the side quests. But I think they could at least apply some of the focus on the side characters to the characters in all the other games. I think that they could easily make another game, and I hope Skyward Sword does this, where the characters have more stories. The side quests themselves are stories. I think they could easily, transfer that over to a game that doesn't focus on side quests. And I actually, that was one of the things I loved about Majora's Mask. It made me care about all the characters. And that's what I would love to see in another Zelda game. Another thing is the transformation mask stuff, but I don't think you necessarily have to turn into other creatures, although that would be pretty cool to see that again. I'd like to be able to turn into just normal monsters, to be honest. But, I think that they can implement that mechanic again by, basically, I've talked about having armors like in Twilight Princess, like how they had the Zora armor and how it let you swim. I think they could easily implement the mask transformation stuff in a function similar to that. You gain equipment or abilities or something that gives you a different moveset. I think that's a cool idea, and I think it's worth revisiting. The Tyler asks, in Majora's Mask, the Deku people are emphasized a lot more than in previous games. They constitute one of the major races of Termina, representing the people of the forest. Why do you think they chose the Deku and not the Kokiri, as they had in Ocarina of Time? Why do you think they never really had another Deku area in later Zelda games? Which do you think personally worked better to fit this role of people of the forest, the Kokiri or the Deku? Well, the Kokiri were they were sort of like the mysterious forest children. They were the mysterious people who are like a tight-knit community, and they were part of a special group, and that was the Kokiri that, were the children of the Deku tree. The Deku tree was a very important character and actually like a deity of Hyrule in a way. Whereas in Termina, they actually don't really talk about the goddesses. They almost have their own set of deities with the giants and stuff. Although they might have the goddesses too. I'm not sure on that point. But the point is another thing is that Majora's Mask is a very strange game. So, and I think that the Deku are the odder of the two. They also fit more of the idea of less mystical, special, and just plain forest entities. They fit the idea that they're just creatures made of wood. They're the commoners of the forest, in a way. And I think that they fit as the standard race instead of, like, trying to expand the Kokiri, which were really just, almost spirit-like beings that were connected to the Deku tree. I think it fit very well, especially with the kind of monarchy and community that they built for the Deku in the game. And was sort of expanding off the business scrub stuff as well. I think it worked pretty well, and I think that, the reason that they didn't do it again in other games is just because Majora's Mask is an odd, strange game, and they decided to do it for that one, didn't need to for others. Cody asks, in my version of Majora's Mask, I'm playing this on the Virtual Console, I cannot complete the Anju and Kafei side quest. No matter what time I ask Anju about staying in the hotel, she says to me, are you staying the night? I answer yes. Then she says that there are no reservations. Is this a common bug, or am I doing something wrong? This is not a bug. It actually, the very simple solution is that you're not supposed to ask her right away. You have to wait until she's received a letter from the postman. If you ask her at any time prior to that, she'll still remember your answer, and you can't complete it until you reset the 3-day cycle. It's kind of annoying, and it actually has tripped me up on occasion, too. The Zelda Master asks, do you think that Keaton from Majora's Mask has anything to do with Pikachu from Pokemon? They resemble each other, and I wonder whether if Keaton was created with Pikachu in mind. What are your viewpoints on this matter? Well, Keaton does bear some similarity in terms of design. I'll admit they might have been had that in mind, at least with the Keaton mask in Ocarina of Time. The thing about it is that the Keaton, if you pay attention, he has the tails. He's actually based on the Kitsune, which is I'm not sure if it's Japanese or Chinese, but it's a mythical creature, which is basically a fox with 9 tails. And that's basically that's what Keaton was. And he even functioned like a trickster spirit, weird, hiding in the moving bushes and appearing and answering the quiz. It just functioned exactly like the Kitsune legend. It's based on the Kitsune, not Pikachu, although they might have had that in mind slightly with the design, I'm not really sure. MWF38 asks, what was the most frustrating part when you played Majora's Mask? Well, when I first played it, I wasn't very good at the game, so I actually struggled through pretty much all the dungeons, but I still liked them. I'd say the one part that not only do I still have trouble with, but I've always found annoying, is the bottom of the well in Majora's Mask, when you have to descend into the well, talk to all those Gibdos, trade items back and forth, hunt down items in other parts of the dungeon, avoid traps. It was especially obnoxious on a 3-heart challenge, in which not only do you have to run around all over the place, but you have to avoid dying from all the traps. It was absurd, and I actually thought it was really annoying. So yeah, there's mine. I'd like to know what your guys' is, though. Darkin27 asks, all these theories say that the Skull Kid from Majora's Mask was the same Skull Kid from the Lost Woods, whom you play the song with. But how can that be if Anju's grandmother tells the story of how a long time ago the giants left Clock Town, leaving behind the Skull Kid? Can the same Skull Kid travel from world to world freely, or is there something bigger going on there? Well, of course he traveled the world to world freely. He's in Termina. If it was the same Skull Kid in Ocarina of Time, he has traveled between them, and probably freely. I mean, I think that's kind of definite. What's interesting is that in the legend that Anju's grandmother talks about, they say that, that the Skull Kid went back to heaven, which is weird. Perhaps that was a reference to him returning to Hyrule. Because, they say he went back to heaven. It was probably not literal, but it'd be interesting if that was what happened. He went back to Hyrule. I don't know. But yeah, that's about all I can answer. I believe he is the ability to transfer between the worlds freely, so long as he knows how to. Metal Yoshi asks, have you ever theorized about how the Happy Mask Salesman originally acquired Majora's Mask? It doesn't make sense to me if its origins are in another dimension. How would he get it if it was in another plane apart from Hyrule? What are your thoughts? Well, again, the Happy Mask Salesman is in Termina, so he already has the ability to transfer between the dimensions. I believe he talks about intentionally seeking out Majora's Mask, which sort of makes sense given his profession, and basically he thought he could handle it and/or wouldn't be a problem for him because he wouldn't put it on. So he sought it out because he was in Termina and knew about the legend. He probably travels between the lands frequently, considering masks are an important part of Termina's culture. Maybe he even comes from Termina originally, I don't know. Somehow I doubt that, because his shop's in Hyrule, but who knows? Ryan Hornbeck asks, do you think Stone Tower is a parallel to a place in Hyrule? If so, which one? I believe the whole Icona region is actually a parallel to Hyrule itself. I mean, Hyrule is a part of the world it's in. Not the whole world is Hyrule. They've referenced other nations, I think. Well, maybe. Anyway, there probably are other nations. And Icona is a part of Termina. And Icona, they reference language like the royal family of Icona, the royal family of Hyrule. Sharp and Flat's versions in both dimensions serve the royal families. The Triforce appears in Icona, briefly, and in Stone Tower, actually. So really, I think Stone Tower is just a structure in Termina's version of Hyrule. That's simple, I guess. Fyra the Vampiress asks, do you think that time really goes backwards when you play the Song of Time? Recall in Ocarina of Time, it just moved the funny-looking blue blocks, and when you turn the back, the only thing that goes away are things you could easily get back: bombs, arrows, items in bottles, great fairy, tiny fairies, etc. You keep important things. I think that the entire game of Majora's Mask is just the Skull Kid and Tattle playing a mean trick on Link and taking his crap. What do you think? I don't think that's the case. I think it was intended to be as they said. The way it works is the Song of Time in Majora's Mask, in Ocarina of Time, it just opened the Temple of Time, and then it had that odd additional thing of moving blocks. I don't think that has any importance, really. In Majora's Mask, it basically rewinds time. Link's not traveling back in time, he's rewinding it, hence why he loses his items. The fact is, they wanted to keep it like an actual Zelda game, so they didn't actually take away the items, they just took away your quantity. I really believe that it's just one of those, it's just a video game things where he is losing everything. That's the point, he's rewinding time. But as for the sake of it being a video game, they wanted you to keep the stuff, just to keep the adventure and progression of a standard Zelda game. Yeah, so... Cub asks, do you think Termina will be in a future Zelda game, or will Majora's Mask be the only game Termina appears in? I really think that Termina was closely tied to Majora's Mask, and that I don't actually frankly think we'll see most of the lands that have appeared in other Zelda games again. And Termina especially, because it was this strange land, part of a strange game with very mysterious and surreal nature, and I just think that it's just part of Majora's Mask, and it doesn't need to continue or be used again. I mean, it's similar to how I've talked about how Majora's Mask shouldn't have a sequel because it would ruin the mystery. I think Termina is intimately part of that mystery. In fact, I think possibly more so than just the title of Majora's Mask and the themes of its own story with Majora and stuff. Last question. Jacob Welch asks, what do you think was the biggest aspect that made Majora's Mask the game it is? That's a really good question. I think that Majora's Mask was a very different Zelda game in a way, yet very similar. It was a Zelda game that had a very different feel in some ways, but also at the same time, well, it had different feelings of mystery, surreal sequences, creepiness. I think it managed to pull off all these new feelings while still being a very distinct and familiar Zelda experience. And I think at the same time it proposed a lot of new ideas involving the transformations, and I think its just uniqueness makes it what it is. The fact that it throws all these ideas out without completely disrupting the standard Zelda feel. And I think also it is what it is because of it became a slightly more hardcore Zelda with more challenging areas and dungeons and stuff. I think that's what makes Majora's Mask what it is. I'd love to hear what you guys think. That might be a little brief and simple, but it's kind of that simple. I guess the side quest stuff too, but that really goes into the same thing. They put a lot more emphasis into the characters, and that whole focus on that put a lot of interesting emotion in the game, and it added this layer of depth, and it made all the people part of this experience. That and the mystery, I think that's Majora's Mask's identity right there. Alright guys, that's it for this time. Be sure to send your questions, no longer only about Majora's Mask, to the email address in the description, and I'll see you guys later.